Good morning.
Morning. Morning.
Okay. I feel honored to be in this group. Closer? Can you hear me better? I was just commenting what a great guy you were.
You were so silent.
No, it's many years ago, and a lot has happened since then. And if you notice, we're all sitting down. We ain't standing up. But the event, an event that I think is a neat one, not for what was actually done at the time, but the result of it. And this was in September of 1944, and there was a flight of 4 of us returning from the mission. And the flight leader was a Colonel Myers, and we were. It's been so long ago, and the memory doesn't always stick with you. But I don't know, 5,000 or 6,000 feet, and Colonel Myers saw this plane down on the deck, go to ground level, and so he indicated to me to stay up and cover him and the other 3 people in 3 other planes dove down to investigate this moving object. Well, it turned out to be an ME-262. And the good part was that I had a great position where I could see everything that was happening, and I could see them going down, strafing the plane, and I could see that where all the bullets were hitting the airplane and on the airplane. And I saw the pilot jump out and run towards the woods. And I would have sworn that he would have been killed. Anyway, they set the ME-262 on fire. We all got together and went home. Well, many years later, coincidentally, one of the other members of this flight got in contact with me by strange ways, and he had made contact with the pilot of the German pilot of that ship, and they had become friends. In addition to that, there was a gentleman who, this is 5 or 6 years ago, he had formed a World War II group. He's a Belgian person in the little town of Halter, which is right where the 262 was shot down. And he had this World War II group, and they would go around to various locations around this little town, and he would investigate the event, and they would put up plaques in memory of that event. One of the events that they were putting a plaque up for was the one that I just described to you. And the number 4 leader of the number 4 member of the 4-member flight, he wasn't there because he got killed. The third one was he lived in the Midwest, and he didn't travel. Colonel Myers, I don't know where he was, and I was the only one left to represent this flight at the dedication of this plaque, and that was about 5 or 6 years ago. And it really was quite an affair. The king and queen sent a wreath of flowers, and they had their name John and Betty, or whatever their first name. They sent a high military representative, the ambassador from New Zealand in Brussels came to the event. The whole town showed up, and it was right. And the final event was a flyover by a flight of 4 F-16s. And the real point to the story is how the Belgian people feel about the Americans. It is tremendous. In this gentleman's house, his pillows are made of American flags to cover. He has American flags on the wall. He has all over the house, American flags. And he even told his parents, who at one point were critical of the Americans, and he told his parents, get out and don't ever come back until you get a different attitude towards the Americans. But I am very impressed by him, and he is still there. And if you ever go to the town of Haltert, Haaltert, which is about 20 miles northwest of Brussels, Belgium, look him up and tell him that you know Wayne Coleman, and he will show you the town.
Thank you, Wayne. That was wonderful.
Good morning.
Morning.
I don't feel like I should be in this august group here because I only did what they told me to do and did it as best I could. But anyhow, thank you for your attention. First, I'm thankful for the people who went before, not only frontiers in this country, but the frontiers in the battle against the Nazi. The ones that went first were the ones that really blazed the trail. By the time that I went in 1944, it was easier by far than they had it before me. But anyhow, my first mission was on Christmas Eve, and when the flag came up, I thought it was beautiful. I thought wrong. Anyhow, we were okay. I think that the most important thing that I could say to you is that airplanes in the mid-air collisions are not to be desired by any stretch of the imagination. But we did have one time, I was sitting in her nose and we were climbing, trying to get altitude, and the pilot vacated his station, the co-pilot was running the ship, and I'm in the nose, and suddenly I found a big swerve, and there was a plane right under my feet. I looked over to the left wing, and the tip of it was built up at about probably 45 degrees. And that's as close as I ever want to be in a mid-air collision. Fortunately, we came back with a bomb load, and the engineer and officer didn't think that was too smart, but we came in safely. One time on the mission, as was not uncommon on a B-17, something failed to work. It was like the Bombay doors were not open. Fortunately, somebody had told me a few days before, if the doors don't open, you can do such and such, and I did. We dropped our bombs on schedule. We came back with flopping Bombay doors. The engineer and officer came out and he wanted to chew on somebody, and of course the lowly staff sergeant was available. And fortunately, with all due honor and so forth, I said to him, sir, here's what we did, and that's how we got rid of our bombs. And he calmed down pretty soon. That was very good. One time we came back on 2 engines, and the first crew I was on, the essential people for the purpose that they went to air-sea rescue, they were in that. We came back with 2 engines instead of 4, and there was an air-sea rescue what they call them, I think a Catalina 205, a 210 or something like that. And they were out here flying, waiting for us to ditch in the channel. We made it back, and at that time we were stationed near Cambridge and at a fighter base, and we got back. It was my Ike jacket, the pride of the airman, of course. It happened to be missing and a few other things because we came in long time after the flight got back. So they thought we were missing. Fortunately, we weren't. So I thank God for that. I thank God for you. And thank you very much. Have a good day.
In the dual role of navigator and machine gunner, right in the nose of the aircraft, where two guns were aimed at different angles to protect from enemy fighters. Jack, tell us about some of your exploits.
Well, here I have a list of all my missions. You'll see some of them are pretty nasty. We lost a lot of airplanes. Take a look. Anyway, I graduated from high school in January 1943, and immediately went into the service down at Fort MacArthur in San Pedro. After almost a year, I was trained, and on December 25th, Christmas Day, 43, I graduated with wings as a navigator, aerial gunner. From then, I was sent to Texas to join up with the B-17 crew, and we trained until March, and then we flew across the Atlantic in the B-17. And then we were assigned to a bomber base, a bomber group, the 96 Bomb Group, which is the eastern part of England. We were told that that's a pretty good assignment, that the 96 Bomb Group didn't have much in the way of losses. So that sounded good. But it turned out that was just the beginning of a disastrous spring of 1944. Our losses were horrendous. I got here, I kept a diary after every mission, and got some excerpts here of one of these bad ones. On April 11th, we got up at 3 in the morning. There was another raid to Posen area of Poland. This is a 2,000-mile mission, if we'd gone all the way. As we approached the enemy coast, it was 10 clouds below us. That means a total undercast. We couldn't see the ground for quite a few hours. When we were over the Baltic Sea, Messerschmitt 210s hit us. I saw 23 of them in one formation. We got a shell through the nose, passing about a foot from my leg, smashing into my ammunition box, and throwing splinters of wood all over. We continued on, passing under the co-pilot's feet, and hit an oxygen bottle, also severing some radio cables. Also, a 20-millimeter shell passed through the horizontal stabilizer, which was back near the tail. Edgewise, it hit the dorsal fin just above the waist gunners, knocking one of them down and dazing him. It made a hole 8 inches in diameter and knocked out the interphone system in the waist and the tail, and all the radio equipment except the radio compass and the G-box. We saw B-17s going down all around us. The formation was terrible. The formation was terrible. In fact, it was just a group of planes. Just a group of planes all together. That was the reason we had such heavy losses. The group lost 11 planes, and our squadron lost 5 out of the 10 we put up. The heaviest losses this outfit has ever had. Between not knowing very well where we were, this is out over the Baltic Sea, you know, many miles from home, and we had one engine acting. We had one engine acting up. this doesn't seem to be working quite as well as it should. I didn't believe that we'd ever see England again, but we did. That night, two of our gunners were interviewed by a international news service correspondent, and this is sort of fun. It starts out a U.S. fortress base. This seems to be really cutting out.
Try this one. Hello, try this one.
Anyway, it starts out. This is the interview of the two guys, the two gunners. There will be 6 fewer men in our barracks tonight. They were in one of the fortresses we saw shot down today. It was a regular free-for-all like they used to be before the days of the big fighter escorts. Bad weather, part of the way, caused us to miss connections with our escort, and we had to fight it out alone through 2 different attacks, going in over the Baltic Sea and then right over the target. The first attack by 24 Messerschmitts was the worst. It lasted about 35 minutes. They all came in from our tail, breaking into waves of 12 each. All 12 working on the same bomber at the same time. They were really mean. As fast as one bunch could fire at us and peel off, the next group would drive in a little closer. 3 fortresses in our group were at that time knocked down, 1, 2, 3. That made us tail end Charlie. They tried for 30 minutes to get us, but the best they could do was fill us full of holes. Those pilots were plenty hot and eager. One came to within 75 yards, so close you could almost reach out and slap his face. Then they started attacking from all sides at once. The top turret gunner was spinning around like a top, going in all directions. For a few minutes, the sky seemed full of fortresses, breaking up and falling into flaming wreckage. One of them rolled wing over wing down several thousand feet. In its crew, we believe, were the 6 buddies of ours in the barracks. 2 of our engines were hit, and we had to salvo our bombs to stay with the formation. After the first bunch of fighters left us, we were okay all the way to the target. At the target, all of a sudden, terrific flak started up. Then 12 or 14 German fighters, this time Focke-Wulf 190s, came roaring hell-bent out of the sun. They dived at us 5 at a time. A 30mm shell put a 2-foot hole in our vertical stabilizer, and concussion knocked down the helmet off one of the gunners, but didn't scratch him. Another shell knocked off the communication lines.
I was furious, and being in the ball turret, I was looking underneath to see if anything was going to fall off. And at that time, some fuel started coming out of number 2 fuel tank, and it was flooding over the hot turbo supercharger, which I knew gave us about 30 seconds to either stop the engines or bail out quick. And so I quickly told the pilot to feather number 2, and he didn't ask any questions, fortunately, and had the co-pilot stop the engine. And after it quit, the pilot said, "Well, why? It's running perfectly." And I said, "Not long." And he said, "Why?" And so I told him what it was, and his answer was, "Good God." That was all the expressions we had about that. But my tour was 30 missions, and I flew those in 79 days, about 2.5 months. And 2 of those missions were on D-Day. And flak was the worst we ever had to affect us. And we had one mission that was real bad for fighters. we had fighters most of the time, but this one was horrendous because we missed our formation of escorts. There were 370 of us, and we were going all the way across Germany and into Czechoslovakia. And that was a long time. I sat in the ball turret for 11 hours and 15 minutes. And that particular time, because of no escort, the Germans were up there after us. We found out later that there were more Germans shooting at us than there was of us shooting back at them. And we lost 47 bombers that day. And that was the worst we ever had. We landed on 2 engines. We lost an engine early on, and turned out that that engine was shot out by 50 calibers. And so we either ran into the bullets or somebody misfired. But anyway, we lost the engine. And then, as we came back across the channel, number 3 engine lost fuel. We didn't have any to transfer it across. So we made it all right. But those 2 missions were the worst of the different phases we had to fight.
He would spend, with 10-man crews, would spend 7 to 10 to 12 hours per bombing mission in freezing cold, trying to avoid the flak. And Jim has some great things to tell you. Hold it right now.
Anyway, I'll just tell you a quick one. As we picked up our new B-17 and started our flight across the North Atlantic to Prestwick, Scotland, our first stop was Goose Bay, Labrador. And it was a very isolated, freezing cold place. But Marlene Dietrich, who was a big famous movie actress at the time, was there. And I still can see her sitting on that baby grand piano with long legs and slid up the side of her skirt. And I was 20 and the jeans were, everything was going good. And our flight across the Atlantic was nothing. The one event was a little bit worrisome. Fortunately, we had the navigator, who was a very intelligent guy. Us pilots, we really didn't know anything about celestial or sun shots and all that kind of navigation. We had to depend on the navigator to get us across. And as we left Reykjavik, Iceland, for the destination of Prestwick, Scotland, the B-24 that took off behind us, B-24s were a little bit faster, and slowly he was gaining on us, and on a slightly northerly heading, maybe 1 or 2 degrees. But over 600 miles, that could be many miles when he hit the coast of Europe. So to this day, I wonder, we kept asking our navigator, Harry, are you sure we're on the right course? Yeah, he was shooting the sun. It was daylight flight. And that's the way he triangulated somehow and pinpointed our position on a map. And he was confident that he was right, and he was. We hit Prestwick right on the button. But I've often wondered what happened to that B-24. Unless they corrected, they spent the rest of the war in a prisoner camp. Now, the crash on Christmas Eve of 1944, that was during the Battle of the Bulge, when von Rundstedt his troops were taking over Belgium and getting into the Ardennes forest and giving us a hard time. So the mission would have been a frontline support mission, and obviously there's not a lot of anti-aircraft guns in the front lines. They're usually around major cities like Berlin and others. But so it would, what us pilots would call a milk run. But it didn't turn out that way. The weather was horrible, and we had to make what's called an instrument takeoff. And the directional gyros we had at the time were not that sensitive that at 80 or 90 miles an hour, you could stay on a 50-foot wide runway. So the other pilot and I decided I would make the takeoff, and I was looking out the side of the aircraft, making sure they had smudged the way, making sure that I'm staying on the runway. So eventually we got up to about 90 miles an hour and we lifted off. And the other guy was supposed to take over, and theoretically he was supposed to not be looking out, but to concentrate on the aircraft instruments, the artificial horizon and the directional gyro, and take over once we were airborne without the possibility of developing vertigo. And you all know what that is. When you get vertigo, you get kind of dizzy. Well, as I brought my head into the cockpit, I could see the other wing was about 10 feet off the ground and ready to start dragging. So I hit the rudder to bring that wing up level, and wham, we hit the trees. I have no idea. It just was immediate, and I had no recollection of the crash. But two of the boys were killed, and I'm looking in my own mind at the faces of two young men, each one about 20 or so years of age, and never changed my mind, their faces, like the rest of us have all changed. So it's kind of sad, but those were the highlights. We had the flak and the near misses and flak coming in a couple of times. One time scared the hell out of me. A piece of flak hit the oxygen tanks, which were right behind the pilots. And it exploded, one of them exploded. And it sounded like we had taken a direct hit. It even shook the airplane. But nothing happened. It just boom, the oxygen was gone, and that was it. But appreciate all your interest in our stories, and I hope to see you again someday. Thank you.
Thank you, Chino.
This is going to be dealer's choice here.
It's dealer's choice today. You're in for a treat, everyone.
No. I probably got time for one story. Yesterday I told you how the Allies defeated the Luftwaffe. But perhaps you might want to hear that story, or perhaps you might want to hear a combat story, a dogfight story.
Check the list.
Wow. This one cuts out, but we'll be fine.
This is my 10th.
Obviously, I had many encounters with the German airplanes, German fighters. But the spring of 1944, when the Luftwaffe was still fairly potent, I will tell you the story of my most interesting, well, one of the most interesting. How many of you have seen the Dogfight series? Yeah. I'm going to tell you about that dogfight that's in there, because that was really an exciting one. And, you know, you're down to 1 versus 1, kill or be killed, and that gets pretty serious. These were in the days when Jimmy Doolittle had turned us loose and told us that we could go ahead and, once the enemy attacked the bombers, we could go ahead and take them to the ground and kill them, stay with them, rather than follow them to 18,000 feet and then come back and continue the escort. It was a major factor in the defeat of the Luftwaffe, by the way. But on this day, 27th of May 1944, we were on a long mission going down to southern Germany, almost to Switzerland. A very clear day, beautiful day, and I was in a flight of 4, and we were on the Close escort, staying in close, weaving back and forth over the bombers. And we heard on the radio that there was some attacks up ahead of us. So we dropped our tanks, pushed the power up, and swung around to kind of follow the stream of bombers, this long stream of them. Go for maybe 100 miles. This incredible sight. And just as when you make a hard turn like that and go in a different direction, it's always a good idea to turn around and look on your tail. The hun and the sun kind of a thing. So just as I turned back and just as I spotted with my wingman, the guy on the inside, that's his job to look back. And he calls out, "Hey, we got 4 bogies coming after us 5 o'clock high." We're in this left-hand turn, and behind us, coming right down on us. We are very, very vulnerable. They weren't bogies, means unidentified German airplanes. These were ME-109s. I spotted them immediately. You could tell they were a little skinny, they just a little bit different. And the way they flew, you could tell what they were. So here they are, they're in straight, like 1, 2, 3, 4, coming like this at us. We made a hard defensive turn right into them. And that broke their attack. We kind of went head on with them. They're diving at us and we're turning and coming out, kind of climbing towards them. And I thought, they'll go right through us and go down and hit the bombers and run. But no, they turn. And these guys want to fight. So we make the turn, they turn left and we turn left. Now here we are, we're up around, the bombers were at 25, we're a couple thousand feet above them. 27, 28,000 feet. This is high altitude. And it's right where the Mustang does its best job. We had that 2-stage, 2-speed supercharger, and at that altitude we could outperform the Messerschmitt. I noticed that they were the ME-109Gs, their best high altitude fighter. So we get them. There are 4 of them. They're coming around in a left-hand circle, and we're coming around trying to get on their tail. They're trying to get on our tail. That's why they call it a dogfight. We whirl around and try to get on the guy's tail. So this is right where we can perform best. And after 2 turns, we cut them off, and we were starting to come up behind them. So they rolled out, and they didn't roll down and dive. They rolled out and flew straight and level back towards Germany. I think they thought that was their best altitude with this airplane. They could outrun us. Well, I didn't know it at the time, but I know now we had about a 10 mile an hour advantage. We were a little faster than they were. So what do? Let's see. First of all, the number 4 guy starts to climb while the other ones fly straight and level. And so I'm a little bit worried. I don't want to get underneath that guy so that he can drop down on us. So I sent my number 3 and 4, my element, Eddie Simpson. I told him, you go after him, and I will go after the 3. So he did, and he shot him down, and we joined up later. So now we got 3 ME-109s and 2 Mustangs going straight to go. You want to shoot somebody down, what's the best way to do it? Get on what we call 6 o'clock, right behind it. Close in as close as you can and fire a long burst. That's the way you do it. So I just closed in on him, fired. Then the guy did something that just amazed me. I got good hits all over him, and he's smoking like crazy. And he rolls over. I think, he's going to split us out and run. But he rolls over and stays upside down, flying upside down, up there about 28, 29,000 feet. So what the heck is he doing? You know, did he expect me to roll over and fall out? Doesn't matter. He had to be very uncomfortable pushing up like that. He must have been one of these airshow pilots, actually. And so I'm sitting there upright, very comfortable, just closed in, fired another burst, and that was the end of him. And he goes down. So now we got two more. I told, oh, John, he's after you. Take it down, and I'll cover you. So he took it down and started evasive action. I think John thought I might have been using him as bait, but it was pretty serious. He was, he might have been able to get him. So he goes down, and the German follows him, and that puts me right behind the German. He saw that right away. He comes around at another turn like this, a hard left turn climbing. And I'm kind of in the same position. I thought, well, I think I'll out-zoom him again this time. So I, made it gentle and then pulled up as steep as I can. Sure enough, he reverses his turn, comes around and pulls up behind me. Uh-oh, now this is serious. Here we got one versus one. And the guy isn't going to leave, and I'm not going to leave. It's kind of a kill-or-be-killed situation. I tell you what, I can look over my left shoulder, look down, and I can still see the nose of that Messerschmitt. It had a large cannon that fired through the hub of the propeller, and it was built to shoot down bombers of the heavy caliber. So there I am. I got this Mustang doing everything it can, and he's trying to follow me. And I look back, I finally see him, he stalls a little bit, he's losing it. And he had to wing over to keep from stalling. Well, what does that do? That lets me drop down right behind him. We go on down again, he flattens out, comes around this hard turn again. He wants to hang around. And now this time I thought, well, I don't really want to be out there in front of that guy again. I think I'm going to try to get inside of him and get a shot. So it was a little bit different angle. It wasn't quite 90 degrees. It was more like 60. And so I pull it inside, and sure enough, it looks like I'm going to make it. He sees that right away, and then he kind of went in the way screwed up. He rolls out and then pulls straight up. Well, he saw my angle off. Now I'm right on his tail. He's pulling up. I'm still full throttle. Pull up. He's pulling up about 45 degrees. And I come up here and get a little sight picture on him and fire a burst. I saw a tracer go off his left wing a little bit, a little left rudder. A Mustang, it had a lot of torque, and you had to keep that ball in the center when you're shooting. And I gave a little left rudder, and pow, I caught him all around the middle of the cockpit of the engine, and he burst into the light smoke, and he just hung there. Then the prop just started windmilling. I quit shooting, coasted up right alongside of him. And I'm looking right there on this close formation, and I can see the grease in the wheel well and the rivets on the airplane. Cockpit was full of smoke, and about 29,000 feet, he just made a slow roll over, came straight down like this, just going just straight down, leaving a tremendous black smoke about 2 miles long. I followed him through 20,000 feet, and I was going faster than I'd ever been in my life. And I said, holy gee, I pulled the throttle back and started a large spiral. And remember I said it was a clear, bright, sunny day, and I'm looking down there, and his smoke was coming this way, and I see his shadow coming on the ground this way. And pretty soon he and his shadow met, and a tremendous explosion. I can't tell you the feelings during that engagement. adrenaline is a marvelous thing. It keeps you, I don't know, keeps you focused, and pretty tremendous thing. Anyway, that's a pretty successful day. We have 4 airplanes. We had shot down, we were attacked by 4 airplanes. We turned around, shot 4 of them down. That was a pretty good day. Thank you very much.